here's Brody Brazil.
Pretty soon we're going to be halfway through with this 2020 Major League Baseball season. And already it has not been easy. It has definitely not been perfect, for some teams especially, more than the rest. And you'd have to say, looking back at the last several weeks, it hasn't even always been convincing that we'd see a full season be completed. And I want to make this point. We're not even, again, at the halfway point, so it all remains to be seen here in basically mid-August. But what I wanted to do was have a quick look at a positive and a potential negative looking forward. And both of these things, by the way, are aspects that we couldn't necessarily have predicted or projected even a month ago when Major League Baseball games were basically getting underway. So first, a look at the positive side. It's that transmission from team to team of COVID-19 hasn't necessarily happened yet. And that was a very real concern when there was discussions of baseball coming back. I mean, unfortunately, on the flip side, we have seen it take place internally within a team, a group that travels together, is at the clubhouse together. They spend a lot of time in relative close proximity. The Marlins, the Cardinals, and maybe even right now, the Cincinnati Reds. We don't even know how that's going to turn out, but they've all experienced how quickly it can spread within a team. But kind of going back to the format and the idea of all this, at the beginning it was to keep Western teams, Central teams, and Eastern teams not traveling so much. And so they wanted to isolate and insulate each division. Now, they don't cross divisions. They do cross leagues, right? AL West versus the NL West. But geographically, they're staying in their own division. And that does kind of help create these bubbles so that, potential transfer of COVID doesn't get completely out of hand. Isolation, basically, is what it boils down to. But again, the biggest positive takeaway here is that it does not appear that teams are passing this along to each other. Some games have been canceled to protect that from happening, but on a regular basis, it does not seem to be going that way. It's also been nice to see increased mask usage and also maybe a decrease in all the germy stuff that normally comes with baseball. Don't get me wrong, we still see spitting and high-fiving and a lot of other stuff. But I really do feel like it has been cut back a certain amount and an important amount. But the biggest negative of all this so far, or one of them, has been seeing how one team can start a chain reaction and affect the schedule and affect everybody. Because when you cancel one game, it probably means you might also cancel a series. And it's not just your games and your team's record. It's the other team. It's their travel. It's their having to shut everything down, not play, and then start back up, and then their precautions that they need to take. And even further than that, it's tough because, again, it's usually one or two individuals per team. They're the cause of this scare entirely in the first place. And I'm not going to blame anybody for how they would contract it, but I think we have heard stories of irresponsibility. And the point here being, look how fast internally it gets out of control. One player does something to a team, and one team does something to an entire baseball league. But getting to the real biggest negative, potentially, and my biggest worry moving forward is what happens in the second half of this baseball season. What happens when a lot of teams look at the standings and flat out realize they're out of it? They're not playing for anything as a team. You add in the fact that they are physically drained from playing this shortened season without a lot of days off in between. They're mentally drained from all the testing, all the worrying, all the separation from their family, all the normal routines being thrown right out the window. And yeah, they're basically physically and emotionally exhausted from playing it safe. And I don't know that I blame them for feeling that way. But the problem is, are some players going to try and remedy that by just breaking rules and not caring anymore because they're out of it and they don't care about everybody else. They just want to fix themselves. They want to get themselves right and do whatever that takes. Are a few players going to take those risks? And I'm scared to even ask, how is that going to affect the entire baseball ecosystem, especially one that has tried to be so careful and safe for weeks and months, and now you're coming to the important part, the conclusion, and maybe not everybody is practicing the same habits anymore. Now I realize, look, a lot of this is doomsday thinking, and these are worst case scenarios, but I do think it has to be mentioned. It has to be discussed ahead of time. What are you going to see? And I know a lot of talk would be that teams may not play as well in the second half, but I'm talking about responsibility of keeping everybody healthy and safe. It has to be considered. There was a certain discipline going into this season. Can it hold in the second half for Major League Baseball?